could possibly capture every subject, every idea that voters may want, or more importantly, that you would want to address. So let me open this up to you a little bit and say, is there something that we haven't talked about, some aspect of what we haven't talked about that you want voters to know?
Well, there's some things that I'm very strongly for that we haven't talked about. One of them is term limits.
Okay.
As a conservative, I struggled with this for a long time because I've always figured that folks have the right to vote for whoever they want for an office.
Right.
If someone's doing a good job, they put them in there and continue to keep them in there. But the result doesn't match that thought process, unfortunately. George Washington, one of my favorite political figures.
Yes.
After 2 terms, George Washington left the office and went back to Mount Vernon. Now, of all the presidents we've ever had, George Washington was the one guy who could have been king if he wanted to in America at that time.
He definitely had it.
He
had to turn it away because he was afraid of it.
Yes, exactly. He could have. Our founding fathers, are sometimes maligned, but they had a different sense of what they wanted to see this country become. And many of the things that they wanted to see it become have kind of slipped away from us, where they wanted to protect us from the government. And by having people stay in office, I'll take Charles Schumer as an example. Mr. Schumer got into the New York State Assembly at the age of 23.
Right.
He is still a United States Senator. He's never had another job in his life. He's only worked in government. That's not what our founding fathers had in mind. Ben Franklin was an inventor. Thomas Jefferson was a farmer. Washington was a soldier, a surveyor. Paul Revere was a silversmith. These people had other professions. They did other things. And they weren't just professional politicians. If we allow people to continue in office for an unlimited amount of time, they continue to accrue power to themselves, and we all know the old axiom about absolute power.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes.
Because the governor has to answer to you and I.
Right.
We get to vote for him.
Yeah.
And the Senate is in a relative balance. 32, 29, 30, 31. From year to year it changes, but it's a balance.
Overall, yeah. Relatively balanced.
Yeah, relatively balanced body. But unfortunately, the Assembly isn't. And so, in New York, the Assembly is the place where we really have to make a difference. And I think that, term limits are an important part of that. With the census here, we're up also looking at redistricting.
Yes.
Yes. And we've all seen the gerrymandered districts that run throughout the state of New York.
Congressional district is very silly if you see that as it reaches out and grabs 2 cities in another district, but nothing else. It's silly.
That's right.
It's silly.
Yes, it is. And those are done. Yes, it is. And those are done that way for a reason. There's a reason why Ithaca has to be tossed into that district, for example.
Yes.
Even though it has nothing, in common with the Hudson River Valley or the southern tier. Well, unfortunately, the people who decide on those districts are the New York State.
Oh, that's the Assembly.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was the Assembly's job.
Well, it's the Assembly and the Senate together that do that. And so again, it's important that we have some balance. Now, it would be wonderful if we could bring in a nonpartisan third party to really set up districts. Because of the policies in New York, we have continued to lose population here. We're going to lose representation in Washington because of it.
I can see that.
We saw that about 10 years ago here, where two assembly districts were basically combined. Both of them had sitting Republicans in them, and so one of them lost his job. And that's the sort of thing, unfortunately, that why it's important that we have some balance in the New York State Assembly. It's a continual consolidate. It's a continual consolidation of power. We have to understand that everyone in New York is not the same. We come with different sets of values. We come with different economic standings. Well, we understand that, and each section has to be represented. We can't take New York City's values and ideas and push them off onto the whole state. We're not all a homogeneous population. The gas drilling is a perfect example of that. Here in the Marcellus Shale region, we have an opportunity to extract these natural resources that the country needs. But it's become a political football.
Very much so.
So if you're a politician on Long Island or in the Hudson Valley or in New York City, it's easy to vote against this. You're not going to get any benefit from the gas. You're not going to, but you can make some points with the greenies, or the environmentalists by voting against it. This should be a local decision. If there's a benefit derived from it, it's going to be our local population who gets that benefit. If there's a risk involved with it, it's going to be our risk.
Yeah, it remains local.
So either way, whether we go for it or we don't go forward with it, it should be our decision. We should not allow folks from other parts of the state to dictate to us whether or not we go forward with this. It's just not, they're not going to be using the same set of criteria that we're going to be using to go.
It's so reasonable, it's simple.
Yeah, and that's why, lately we've been hearing about these meetings with the Department of Conservation coming in. And all these busloads of protesters who are coming from Philadelphia or New York City or wherever.
Everywhere but here.
Yeah. I'm a farmer, and I have a plot of land, and I'm thinking about allowing drilling on my land. I want to talk to the environmental conservation people. I want to find out what the risks are.
Right.
I don't need people with signs shouting and yelling all around me, drill, don't drill.
Right.
I want to get the information. We have experts on it who are going to come here to talk to us. We don't need all that noise around it. Allow the people here to find out what they need to find out about it. Don't, we make too much of it sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, those were some of the things I wanted to talk about. Term limits. I wanted to talk about the gas drilling. I wanted to talk about the imbalance in New York politically that we need to address.
Ask you about that. Too often we see that the major media is a little bit remiss, shall I say.
You know what you do, Michael, is you get some in-depth answers. And unfortunately, our major media doesn't want in-depth answers. They want sound bites.
So I can understand what they say. And I want to thank you for that. And Art, it's been very informative. I think this has been a great help for voters. And going forward, they'll be able to have a choice based on fact and what you've said directly and their own opinions to say. I agree.
Well, thank you.
And I thank you for your time.
Okay. Michael,